gonna hold to the hand of God. I'm gonna keep the faith. I'm gonna hold this banner high. I'm gonna finish my race. I'll receive hidden manna and a new white stone when I win this war. I've got a church and a family.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another awesome episode of Defining the Dash. Well, today is going to be great. I know everybody loves hearing from Brother Mark Mullins, and so he and I have always tried to be as transparent with you as we can in order to help you and to maybe help some young people to learn from mistakes and things that we've made and show just God's mercy and grace to us, and he is no respecter of person, and so if he don't do it for us, then he'll definitely do it for you. So we've always tried to show that, and so today we felt like having Brother Mark go into some of his testimony and sharing what God has done for him and how he has helped him through his life, how he has guided him, and just the awesome things that God has done in the direction of Brother Mark's life. Brother Mark, it's always awesome to have you on as a co-host and as one of my best friends, but today, buddy, it's awesome to have you as a guest on the show, and I've already got to get a glimpse of some of the things that you're probably going to share, and man, I am super excited just to hear what and all you've got to tell us today.
Well, I appreciate the kind invitation, Brother Chad, and also got to realize that there's nobody else we could ask tonight. So,
well, okay,
but it's good to be here anyway.
We did say we tried to be transparent, didn't we?
That's right.
Truth be told, we did get shot down a couple times, but that still don't take away from the fact that you have an awesome story to tell, Brother Mark.
Well, I appreciate it, Brother Chad. I appreciate it.
Here I was covering so well right before we crashed and burned. But anyway, oh, Brother Mark, you know, God has done so many things throughout your life that, you know, I've got to really, and I hate to show how old I am here. I'm not exactly sure of your age, but I know I watched you grow up. Me and your brother was best friends, and I spent a lot of time at your house and he at mine and everything. So I've got to watch you grow up into a great guy, a great Sunday school teacher, great preacher, and I have seen different things that God has done in your life and miracles that he has worked. But I'd like for you today just to go in and to share some of your testimony, just of how you came to know the Lord as a young man and everything. What can you tell us on that, Brother Mark?
Well, Brother Chad, I can tell you a little bit about my younger years. I guess when you start a story like this, you start out once upon a time.
Once upon a time in Jolo.
That's right. And there was a time, you know, once upon a time. And growing up, we started out. I started out in the Baptist church. I was, you know, no choice of my own. It's just where I was, where Mom took me. And but my mom and my grandmother, we were Baptists, and my brothers and sisters, you know, by definition, I guess. And but we went there. I was probably about 10 years old or so. We was going to the Baptist church, and Preacher Gardner was a great man. He was probably 70 years old when I remember him. And I remember there not a whole lot about that. I remember the Bible schools were pretty awesome, and I remember the old ladies always had the best candy. So I remember that. I remember the church pews were always pretty cool to climb underneath, like yours out in the monkey gym in some ways, little tunnels and such. But I also remember my mom taking me down to the basement, and I'll probably never forget it. You know, as long as I have half of a brain. But she would take me down them old steps and, you know, back to the hallway and to the end of the basement. The Sunday school rooms pulled the curtains on the left, and the right side was the cafeteria. But when you go beyond those curtains in the cafeteria to the end of the hall, that's where the bathroom was. Oh. And the bathroom is where I learned probably as much about church as what I did in church, because it was in the bathroom where I learned what to do and what not to do during church.
I had a few of those meetings. I had a few of those revivals myself.
Oh yeah. And so, but yeah, that was kind of where we got started at, and where I got started. Mom just continued, and from where she was raised, and probably around my 10-year-old self, I can't remember the exact day, or how old I was for sure, but I remember we were already going to a Christian school in West Virginia, and the tuition was going up in price. And with my mom and dad having 5 kids that they claimed on taxes, anyway. I don't know if they claimed me the whole time, but they claimed me on taxes, I'm sure. But the tuition was going up, and my dad was disabled, and my mom, she was a nurse, still is a nurse. Sometimes she would work part-time and try to raise us full-time. Sometimes she would work full-time and try to raise us full-time, and sometimes she wouldn't be working and trying to raise us, double full-time. And but tuition was going up, and the reality of it was, back in those days, if you didn't have the money to pay for schooling, then you just couldn't go to school. And so knocked up that school the way I understood it to be anyway. And so Dad was driving by the King Mountain Church where we go to now, and he was driving down the road, and he noticed some boys and girls out playing basketball and volleyball that had similar attire to what we wore to our Christian school. And so he knew it was a Christian school. We didn't know anything about him. He went there, didn't really know anything about the church. He just knew it was a Christian school. So he goes home and talks to Mom about this, and they have an ideal to come to Virginia and from West Virginia and to talk to whoever this person was that was running the school and kind of see what the tuition was. And so they make that, and they, I don't know, I remember they tell me they was talking to Brother Webb, so I don't know if they promised Brother Webb that I would cut his grass, or if they promised him, that I would help wash his car, or that my brother and sisters would work around his house. I don't know how they got him to agree, but this old Hill Jacks from West Virginia, he's like, we'll give him a shot. Yeah. So here we go. So we take ourselves to school over there. And so we're going to school there for 2 or 3 years, and we're still going to church at the Baptist church. Still loved all those folks over there. And we got invited to a revival. And I think it was Sister Marilyn Richardson that had invited my mom to a revival. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was Sister Marilyn. But anyway, somebody had extended an invitation for us to come to the revival. I don't know who the preacher was. I just know that Mom said we're going to church, and so we just went to church. And so we come to church. And so, but when we got there, we had a lot of friends we went to school with already. And from that, Mom didn't feel like we needed to go back to the Baptist church. And so, interesting up to this point, my mom, although we self-identified as Baptist folks, my mom was already a holiness woman before we came to King Mountain.
Right.
And I mentioned that earlier today. Mom, my great grandmother was a praying woman. She was a shouting woman, and Mom had told me that growing up, she remembered seeing her grandmother out milking the cows and feeding the chickens and that kind of stuff, and listening to her, watching her shout, and listening to her pray and speak in tongues. And so, I don't know how much Mom knew that was the holiness folks by definition, but Mom, she was raised around a holiness woman. And so Dad on their side, my father, he was a primitive Baptist. And so if our listeners don't know what primitive Baptists are, they're what we call the no-hillers. And so both of them come from a Baptist family. Some were very strong with the traditional Baptists that we would think about Baptist, free will Baptist, if you will. Father was a no-hiller or a primitive Baptist, and here I am. And so anyway, so we're coming to school, and we start coming to church, and Mom gets in that meeting, and she just felt right at home, seeing people shout. And she was already, on fire for God. She had already changed the way she dressed. She already changed the things she looked at. She already changed a lot of herself before we ever came to a holiness church. And so when Mom came in, and she looked around and seen that there's a lot of women that dressed like she dressed. Right. And a lot of people that didn't have the television at home, like she didn't want to watch television anymore. And the Lord already convicted her of that. And she looked around and realized that she wasn't the only one not wearing jewelry. that it was the fad, if you will, in that church. And so
Right.
all that together, she felt the Lord led her on into the church. And then, I didn't have a driver's license, and so I just had a boss. And Mom said, "You're coming to church," and that's how I ended up in the holiness movement. And so, but I remember Brother Chad growing up. Lord blessed us to go to church and sat under a great pastor and great Sunday school teacher, Brother Robert Deal, Brother Noah Lester,
yes, sir.
Brother Steve Helton, and Brother Ward. I'll probably end up forgetting a bunch of names if I keep going. Brother Dale Ward, but
Yes, sir.
such great teachers and influencers in my life. I remember we were just growing up going to church there, and had a lot of great experience, and got to go to the homecomings and the camp meetings, and very involved in the youth camp. And Brother Tim and Sister Leanne, they were so gracious and took us places and cared for us and loved on us. That he did to all of us, and really we really felt right at home. And so that's kind of where we hung our hat at for a while. But I remember growing up, Brother Chad, in my teen years, Mom always pushed us to go to as many youth camps as we could go to. Right. So she was all, and now that we've got 3 kids running around, I can kind of see 2 different sides of that. I can kind of see the side where you want your kids to have some good experiences, you want them to meet other kids, have good relationships, good people talking to them, good influences in life. But I also see the side of it, Brother Chad, that I just want these kids out of my hair. And so I'm not really sure why the reason Mom and Dad pushed us, into things. But, we were big into scouts, and we'd done a lot of camping there, a lot of youth camps and stuff. And so that's kind of what the middle school and the high school things kind of looked like. And so that was kind of my youth growing up, and, what God had allowed. Nothing of my own doing, but right. God had just orchestrated things even at a young age, to grow up under that kind of leadership.
Well, I know your mom and dad are precious folks. My kids still call your dad Uncle Benny, mm-hmm. And your mom has always been so precious to me. She always treated me like one of her own when I was there, mm-hmm. And I have a lot of memories there. And I could see how she did push y'all to really get that experience, mm-hmm. with God. I mean, she really seemed to give it her all. That anytime you was around Sister Jennifer, she was not somebody who spoke out a lot. I mean, as far as that goes, as far as you may go to church and unless you're sitting with her talking to her, mm-hmm. I mean, she's you're probably not going to hear her speak a whole lot, as far as that goes. But she always, you could tell, just her heart was pushing her children. She wanted to see her children have that close relationship with God. She herself wanted to have a close relationship with God, and we saw the benefits of that many times, during the services. Even mm-hmm. sitting there in her own pew, God would move on her and she'd be shouting and things. And she was a precious lady, and no doubt her and your dad both had a great influence on the man you've become today. But now. You talked about getting us all the way up through your teenage years, mm-hmm. and as a teenager, you did you ever face any trials or backlash maybe from other teenagers in the community around where you lived of why you were choosing to go to a Christian school instead of the public school, mm-hmm. or maybe even from your own family? I know there's I've had family members talk about it, why would you send your kid to a Christian school? Why would you, if you're not familiar with it, and you don't have that same focus, then it's so abnormal to you to think of, why would you not just put them on the bus and send them to the public school? Why would you take the time to have to drive them down there and go through this trouble and then are they even going to be able to get into college?
Right.
So there's all this different things that a stigma, so to speak, of Christian schools. And so, did you face a lot of backlash of that you can remember growing up from family or friends or people in the neighborhood that just didn't understand the path that your family had chosen?
Right. Yeah, Brother Chad, I do remember some things of that. I remember just because of some of the circles we would run in. Mom, she was always, and Dad, they were always big into Cub Scouts and to Boy Scouts and the 4-H club and church, and so we just done a lot of different things. And but just because of some of the contacts we had, by definition, not that we weren't important. I'm still not important, but some of the people we would go camping with and stuff was very well connected to the local politics. And,
sure.
And I remember growing up that one of those real close connections to the politics was in a position where he could make a statement, and he did make the statement that I don't understand why your kids would go to that Christian school. Public school has a lot more to offer. We've got better classes, we've got better education. It won't cost you anything. I remember that kind of thing. And so, but something else I realized about that was that same person that had those thoughts was also in a position that he overseen a lot of the money that came into a particular school. And it would be a school that we would go to, and if we went to the public school route. And so the statement that was made was that, if you can bring your kids into this school or schools, then that would increase the amount of funding that we have for our other programs. And there's only 2 or 3 of us. There's probably a couple hundred people went there,
right.
already. But yeah, we did have some pressure, some political pressure. Mom and Dad did. I don't understand why you would do that. Why would you not? And then as far as other pressure that I felt, as a young man, and sometimes as young people we have these wild, crazy aspirations. You think you're invincible. I remember playing t-ball and baseball, and when I was a little kid. And if you watch me on the softball field now, you would think I never even heard of the game. I'm no good at all. But, I like to watch other people play, and
right.
I really like it when I get to play and hit the ball and have a young person run for me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Advantage of being older now.
That's right. But I remember being a little kid, man, and, my parents were okay with t-ball. We were okay with baseball. So for some reason, I would get into the All-Stars. I don't know why. I think they just needed a couple extra people, a little water boy or something. I don't know. I don't know how I ended up in All-Stars, but I did that a few times. But I always wanted to play football, and I didn't know why. Now, I thought this is a tribute to Mom. I always wanted to play football, and the local coach to where we lived at wanted me to play football because I was a little broader shouldered, or maybe he just liked the way I ran, He just watched my belly jiggle. I don't know. Maybe he got a hoot out of it. But he was wanting me to play football. And I remember I wanted to play football. And it's just a little tiny school. And but Mom, she drew the line at football. And the reason why is that the games were on Wednesdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
And so, she was okay with Mom, Dad was okay. And, Dad he really didn't mind either way, I guess. But Mom, she was. But anyway, but I felt that pressure as a young kid that I wanted to. I was already doing some of these other games, but I wanted to play football. But the pressure was on to play football because I thought I could really do something. I don't know what I was going to do. But also, Mom had that pressure there, and her pressure was stronger than my pressure. And her pressure said, "You're not going to play football." And so I remember being a young kid and feeling the pressure within myself, and then the political pressure from around us. Why not go to a public school and that kind of stuff. And then even in scouting, and you've got good and bad people everywhere, good and bad kids everywhere. But I remember being in scouts and feeling like I was somewhat of an outcast,
Sure,
because there's only a few of us, maybe just our family went to a Christian school. Maybe some other people went to Mount Mission, but the majority of them went to public school. And along with that, the majority of them listened to music that we would listen to, and the majority of them would do different things that we didn't do. And so did have some pressure that way, why do you not go to public school? I remember feeling those kind of pressures. And so, but it all wasn't bad memories. But as far as the pressure, there was definitely pressure there.
Absolutely. they, talking about, the pressures of a child, and, a lot of times we don't realize the pressure that a child faces.
Mm-hmm.
And, your mom and them made, the right decisions. But, the overwhelming pressure that can be placed on a child sometimes for those decisions that were made,
right,
can be so extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And did your parents ever sit down and talk to you and be like, hey, there was a lot of times even in my childhood that I'm like, man, I don't understand why you're not allowing me to do this.
Right.
Was there ever a time they sit down and was just like, hey, I know you don't understand right now, but this is why we do this, and you're going to understand this maybe in the long run.
Right.
And I feel like it's so important to do.
Right.
Especially in the day and time we live in, because they're probably looked on now. Children today would probably be looked on even more as an outcast now than what they were probably in my and your day.
Mm-hmm.
For being part of a private school like that. But was there a point when your mom and dad finally had to set you down and be like, well, this is why we do. This is why we're making these decisions.
Right.
You and I have tried from the very onset of this to say it's important for you to not only know what you believe, but why you believe it.
Right.
Was there a point where your parents had to say, Mark, I know you don't understand right now, but this is why we believe, this is why we're making these decisions,
mm-hmm.
is because we believe this.
Right.
And,
yeah, there were moments like that. And honestly, Brother Chad, when they would tell me that, I just thought they was full blown-y.
Right.
For me, transparent.
Hey, that's absolute transparency, right?
And I just really like, I don't understand why I can't play football.
I totally get where you're going. I get that.
But it reminds me of a Bible verse, and the Bible verse tells us in Hebrews 13:17 says, "Obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves."
Right.
Now, sometimes, I would obey them that had the rule over me and submit myself because I chose to.
Right.
And other times I didn't have much of a choice unless I was going to deal with the consequences, like we talked about last week. You know
Absolutely.
What I mean? And so either way, I would end up submitting.
Right.
Sometimes it would hurt a little more, on the back end than others.
Right.
But the Bible says, "For they watch for your souls; they must give an account. They may do with joy and not with grief, for that's unprofitable for you." But there was a few times, when I didn't understand, but I had to go with it.
Was there a point as a teenager where you was like, Mom and Dad, I see where Mom and Dad was going with this now.
Yeah.
And they definitely was making the right choices.
Yeah.
Maybe looking at some of the friends that was going to the public school or something and look at the lives their family was in and being like, I see.
Yeah.
I see where they were going,
Yeah, I think so. That reminds me of a story, true story. Man, that's a lot of these stories I wish wasn't true. But one true story, I remember, when you're a teenager, I don't know what makes us think this, made me think this. I may be the only person that ever thought this, but you just think you're invincible. Yeah. You know what I mean? And your mom just tells you, dad tells you, be home at 10:30 latest, And now it sounds pretty good in theory until it's time for, camp meeting on a Friday night. And everybody knows a camp meeting on a Friday night, we just stay out late, we have a good time, we go play volleyball, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I remember being younger, a teenager. Yeah, I was driving, so I guess I was at least 16. And it was a Friday night, and it was the end of camp meeting. And we went somewhere to play volleyball. I can't remember what it was. And Todd Ward was with me. I hate to even throw a name out there, but he was. It seems like every time I got in trouble, Todd was involved somehow. I don't know.
Been there.
But Todd was with me that night, and we was going to go play volleyball. We went and played volleyball. I can't remember who else was in the car. But on the way home, we stopped by McDonald's, and we got 2 sweet teas. And I got 2 sweet teas because I had to drive. I was half asleep. And I don't know if that made Todd nervous or not. It made me a little nervous, so I got 2 sweet teas. And so I went home that night, and it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, I knew I should have been home by 10:30, maybe 11, something like that, but definitely later than that. And, man, I'm pulling in there, and I'd come across the bridge and I'd turn the lights off, just going by the street light, kind of coasting in. Well, the time I was coasting in, Mom was coasting out the door. And Mom caught me, man. I was so late, getting home that night. The next day, man, she gave me a lot of grace, more than what I probably deserved. But I ended up having to cut the hillside. It took me all day to do it, man. I was sweating my guts out. And so, but it was what time I was sweating my guts out, Brother Chad, that I realized, I could have been out late tonight. And I could have had a car accident. I didn't have a cell phone. Nobody didn't know anybody if I went over the wrong mountain. You know what I'm saying? Went in the wrong ditch. I could have been sitting there for hours. Anything could happen. And I think it was that night when I realized that, just because I'm a teenager and I'm living under somebody's roof, even if it don't make sense to me at that time, they really are trying to their best to help me to grow right and watching out for my soul, that because they have to give an account. Yeah. And so, and I think it was that night. I don't know how I got on that tangent, but there was a few times when the light bulb finally came on that the rules that they set for me wasn't to hurt me.
Right.
It was to keep me safe.
Yes, sir. And there's no fear like that fear of when the silhouette of your mother comes floating through the doors.
Oh, man, I tell you about that.
Oh, man. I know exactly. Mom never came out on the porch, but it was when I opened that door and here she come floating through the kitchen.
Oh man, you didn't want the spirit. You wished it was a ghost.
Yeah. Thought I was going to be a ghost. That's what I was like. And,
with his old mom.
Yeah, good old mom. But, and so, moving on now, Brother Mark, through your teenage years, you being from, West Virginia, coming from across the mountain like that, mm-hmm. Was it difficult as far as like, most of your friends would have been on the opposite side of the mountain.
Yep.
Yep. Most of your friends that went to that church, went to that school.
Right.
You were kind of isolated from them. Mm-hmm. From the time you left school of the evening till, back then we didn't have the cell phones.
Right.
You didn't even have internet. Mm-hmm. We didn't have the Xboxes where you can play online. Mm-hmm. So, other than your brothers and sisters, and then, I guess there, you might have had some neighbor kids around your age that you could have played with in that area. But, how hard was that as far as feeling probably isolated from kids of like faith,
right.
that could be supportive of you and helping you. How hard of a battle did you have with that?
I remember it was somewhat of a battle, Brother Chad. I remember being a child, and really, when we started coming to church and school, it came out, and our life was in Virginia. We lived in West Virginia.
Right.
We lived an hour away. It was about an hour drive one way. It depends on who was driving, I guess. Sometimes we can make it 50 minutes, depending on who's driving. And if it was a holiday weekend.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But
as long as they wasn't working on Bill Young.
Right, exactly. But I remember growing up, and, I think it would bother my older brothers more than it bothered me because I just got used to the jokes, But you hear about West Virginia jokes all the time. Even now I like a good West Virginia joke. I tell a good West Virginia. I'll listen to a good Kentucky joke, Virginia joke. It don't matter to me. West Virginia joke, I don't care where it is.
Yeah.
But I remember being a young boy, and I felt a little ostracized just because I was from West Virginia.
Right.
And not just from West Virginia, I was from McDowell County, which is the southernmost county of West Virginia, the poorest county, the southernmost county, the most ostracized county. And actually, for a history lesson, at one point in our existence in McDowell County, we were called the Free State of McDowell. I don't know if you knew that.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember our representative from that area. Went to Charleston and done some paging with them there in the court or I want to say courthouse, but it's not a courthouse, in the Capitol building a couple times. But he would stand up, Mr. Fanning would stand up, and he says, "I'm Mr. Fanning, I'm from the Free State of McDowell." And the reason why we were the Free State of McDowell is there was a portion of time where Virginia didn't want McDowell County, and West Virginia didn't want McDowell County. And it wasn't until we realized that people realized that McDowell County was full of coal that they started arguing over McDowell County.
Wow.
And it actually went to West Virginia. So that's kind of interesting history story about
yeah.
McDowell County. But I remember being from the county, and hearing the West Virginia jokes, and I felt like kind of in the crowd because I went to church and school over there. But yeah, there was times, that where I lived at, I felt like I was different from where I lived at.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and put a pause on this episode here. If you want to join us back next week for the remainder of Brother Mark's testimony, he's going to get in. We've always called ourselves the potluck of podcasts, so next week, this has just been dessert. We're going to get into the meat and potatoes next week. And so be sure to come. Oh, man, I'd like to have some meat and potatoes right now. But be sure to join us back next week, and we will finish this out. Brother Mark's got some great testimony still to share. And so until then, be sure to make every moment count. God bless you.
When I win this war, I've got a church and a family, and